Hello, and welcome. So awesome to see you for our Thursday Education Bite. Today we're talking about define, align, deliver, the power of your ideal client attraction. I am very glad to be here with you. My name is Shondell Labazetta. Welcome everyone who's in our NLP Sales Mastery Academy group. And as you know, we are very focused on the fact that sales is the number one life skill. Now, many of you have obviously heard our philosophy before around sales being the number one life skill. There are three important sales you make. The sale you make to yourself about your worth, your value, what you can achieve. Your second sale, obviously, about the influential conversations that you have and how you pace and lead people with your ideas. And then, of course, the typical sale that we're all familiar with, which is the transactional sale that we make, exchanging value and services for money and time. And so welcome today. One of the things that's really, really important that I want everybody to understand, by the way, give me a little shout out if you're watching this video live, then pop a hashtag live in the comments, or perhaps if you're watching the replay, make sure that you type in hashtag replay. Now, we have a workbook for today's session, and if you want access to that workbook to go through and work through this material, or even come back and take this training again with the workbook, then just pop workbook in the comments and we'll make sure that we get that out to you so that you can take some notes and really get the juice out of this. So many people that I work with, talk about the fact that they're, working with clients that, end up being a real struggle to deal with, or sometimes, they really find that they're interacting with people. They love how the interaction starts out and then, their clients disappear, or perhaps they're not the right fit. And so today what I want to share with you is some of my best secrets around how do we work with the people that we really want to work with. Because let's face it, we can make sales and we can get people into our community, but if they're not aligned with your values, or they're not, truly seeing the value proposition that you're offering and getting what they need out of your services and your products, then sometimes the delivery aspect of it can be a little bit of a drag. And I know that this plays a big role in terms of how you're marketing yourself, how you're building your attraction strategy, and that's why this program today is called Define, Align, and Deliver. So if you want the workbook, once again, if you're watching this on my page, you just have to click the button below. If you're watching in our NLP Sales Mastery Academy community, then just pop workbook below and we'll make sure that we get that out to you. So I think, the power of our ideal client attraction strategy actually comes in many different forms. And so, whether you're doing an outbound campaign where you're trying to attract the attention of the people that you really want to work with, whether you're, doing inbound and you're trying to, get people to get interested in your products and services and go on a journey with you, I think it's really important, first and foremost, to understand the differences, or the key differences between your sales and marketing. So to me, marketing is about bringing people to the door, and your sales process is about helping them walk through it. And so as we look at the ideal client attraction strategies, this is going to make an impact on the way that you think about your marketing to attract the people that you really want to work with, but it'll also help you to refine and I suppose really drill down on your sales steps and your sales processes that are helping you to actually secure that interest, that when somebody raises their hand and they say, hey, I'm interested in doing some work with you, that you've got a synergy and a pathway to actually take them on. So let's get into some content today, guys. If you don't have the workbook with you just yet, then feel free to take some notes, pen and paper, have it handy. We've got a lot of things to cover off on today, and I know that you're going to get some amazing insights around your marketing attraction strategies, but also your sales processes, and really reducing that load of the time that it takes in order to work with your ideal clients. And speaking of time, I think something that's really important to keep in mind is that we've all got a favorite client, someone that you've worked with that, maybe they've been working with you for a long time, or it might even be a newer client that you haven't been working with for a really long time, but it's just a joy to actually work with them. And so I'd like you to keep that person in mind. What are some of their characteristics? What are the things that makes that interaction really profound and amazing? Because you see, when we have the clients that we love working with, everything becomes easy and we get into a flow with what it is that we're trying to do. And so I want to start off today's session as we get into some content. I want to start off by talking about the differences between our leads and our prospects, and also moving people over to that stage of becoming clients. And so, there are a number of different layers and a journey that we almost go on with people where, understanding the criteria and the difference between these things can be sometimes the difference that really makes the difference. So, when we're looking at leads and people then transitioning to become clients, often we have these different layers of talking about this. So, a suspect might be somebody who you think probably has a need. Maybe they've raised their hand, and sometimes it might be that you put a post out on social media, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, depending on which one is more aligned with your audience and who you want to talk to. They might like a post or make a comment on a post, or there's an interest of some sort where they're buying in at some level. And so this is what we generally define as a suspect. Now, some people make the mistake of thinking that if they're getting traction with some of their marketing that they're putting out there, that people are raising their hands or they're liking their posts, or they're interacting with comments and things like that, they make the mistake of thinking that that person is a prospect. And so I want you, if you take nothing else away from this particular little segment and this training today, I want you to really be clear around the definition between what makes a suspect versus what is an actual prospect. Now, a prospect is somebody who potentially actually has like some kind of need. There's a link there. They're potentially in a buying mentality. And one of the things that we often say is that in any conversation, when you get somebody raising their hand, people are going to be in various different stages. There's a percentage of people that are ready and they're ready to buy now, in which case then they're on the hunt for something that actually fits with their needs and where they want to be. Then there are some people that are just browsing and, they have a curiosity or they have an interest. And so this is the definition of looking at the difference between somebody who you suspect might have a need versus someone who actually does have a need. Then we identify that and take that to the next level, and then there's a process of qualification. Now, I often find that when people don't have the clients that they really want to work with, that they haven't got a really good qualification process. Now, sometimes they don't have a qualification process because one never existed, so they've never actually thought about that, or they might have a framework or a system that's very ad hoc, or it could be very intuitive, like it's in their mind and they just kind of follow that process as they go through. And it's a bit haphazard, a little bit hit and miss. But one of the things that I'd like to really encourage everybody who's watching this to action right away is to have a qualification process. How do you identify and then qualify the people that you really want to work with? And so when people move from qualified, meaning that they actually have a need and that's it, that there is a desire there at the moment, then it's a matter of timing and aligning what you have with their needs and building that value proposition. Now, here's another important stage that a lot of people make the mistake of missing, and that is that just because somebody's qualified, you've identified that they've had a need, you've matched their needs, there's the actual process of that person being convinced that this is the right thing for them, and then the next stage is that they actually become enrolled. So I want you to have a think about, in terms of your sales cycle and, your marketing cycle and how you, define, attract, and actually deliver to the audience that you really want to be working with. Have you got a set of steps or a guideline or a pathway, client journey that you take your clients on? And is it clear in terms of the stages of your sales process or the stages of the way that you identify those ideal clients in terms of taking them next level? Now, one of the most important facts that I really want to share with you today is that everyone is not your client. And so if you think that everyone is your client, then odds are you will have no one being your client. And you might be wondering, what is it exactly that is causing us to put a phishing picture in this workbook here, and that would be oops, I've had something happen with my tech here, guys. I'm just getting back on board, so just give me a moment while I figure that out for you. Let's see. Give me 2 seconds, everyone. Okay, great. So welcome back. Just sorting out those little tech issues there. Thank you for your patience on that. So one of the things that you might be curious about in terms of actually, can we just get a little shout out there if you guys can still hear me and see me? I just want to make sure that I'm still coming through. So maybe a comment or reaction there, just to make sure that I am still live and coming through loud and clear. Go. Just want to take that back one sec. Oh, yes, good, fantastic. Sorry, something going on with my controls here. Thank you so much for your patience seeing that coming through. Appreciate that. So you probably might be wondering, let's get back on track here. You probably might be wondering why I'm saying, that we've got a phishing picture in our workbook here. And so I just said before the little tech interruption that everyone is not your client. And so sometimes I'll speak to professionals, business owners, sales professionals, people that are engaging with us, and I'll say, who is your target client and who do you really want to attract in your strategy and the way that you're reaching out to your audience? And sometimes they'll say, well, we can help everybody, Shondell, because our service is very diverse and we can work with these people, we can work with those people, etc. And while that may be true, maybe your maybe your product lends itself to a number of different audiences, and perhaps there are a bunch of things that you can do for a lot of different people. One of the challenges with, marketing to everybody is that, if you try and make your message so broad and so wide that it actually connects with everybody, then you end up connecting with no one. And so what I want to really highlight here is the power and the value of a niche. Now, I'm sure you've heard of it, and before you go, oh, a niche, yes, I know, I've got a niche, I've got to have a target audience, before you get into that frame of mind where you're thinking, oh, I'm going to switch off now because Shondell's been saying, all the things that I've heard before, I want you to listen up really closely. You see, when I think of niching and when I think of really doing more with less, which is truly the definition of leverage, right? The definition of leverage is, how do I do more with less? Now, I know that whoever you are, whatever industry you're in and whatever service you're representing, I know that you really truly want to help people, because you wouldn't do what you do if you didn't have a connection to really making an impact. Now, I'm guessing that one of your goals is that you would like to help more people and you'd like to be able to make a bigger impact and, make some cash in the process, particularly if you're a salesperson who earns commissions and things like that. But the number one yes, exactly, do more with less. And so, the key thing here is that I know that you would like to be able to have a lot of leverage in what you do, and to be able to do that, then we have to have a framework which we follow. Now, could you work with everyone? Maybe you can. I would argue that perhaps that would take a lot of energy, a lot of time, and potentially impact you significantly in a way where, your credibility, your authority, all of those things become diminished because you're trying to hit too many messages all in the one story. And so what I really want to highlight here is the value of a niche is really about being able to do more with less, and particularly if you're a person who does a lot of the marketing. So I'm speaking to our business owners and our founders and people who potentially are sales professionals that have to generate their own leads. Remember, our marketing is bringing people to the door, our sales is helping them walk through it. And so if we're trying to do more with less and we have a number of different value propositions, a number of different target audiences, then the messaging needs to switch for each of those, which means we have to be more adaptable, more quick on our feet to be able to target our message to the right people in front of us. So having a niche in any distinction of sales and marketing is really important in terms of being able to do more with less. So the metaphor or the analogy that I will often use when it comes to niching is I often talk about fishing. And for those of you that might have been wondering what this was about, this is what the workbook here has in terms of the picture of the fishing and actually catching fish. Now, if we take the analogy and we say, well, we want to get a lot of clients, we want to make a lot of sales. For many people, the first place that they go is they think, where are all the fish hanging out, or where are all the clients hanging out? Well, they're probably in the ocean. So how are we going to catch them all? Well, I want to be able to catch as many as possible with as least amount of effort as possible. And so what most people do is they go and they say, well, how do I get a big net, right? So usually that's an ad campaign or something like that. It probably costs a fair bit of money, like hiring a big fishing trawler and dragging that fishing trawler along the bottom of the ocean. You hope that you're going to actually draw in lots and lots of fish. And like marketing, a lot of people make an investment in terms of a big ad or something that's actually going to potentially cost a lot of money to attract that attention, with no real guarantees around whether or not it's going to be in front of the people that you really want to see it. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. Whereas if we do more with less and we're truly utilizing leverage in our strategy around marketing and sales, then what we do is we say, who are the people that we love working with? And remember, at the beginning of this broadcast, I asked you to have a think about who's your favorite client, the person that's just a delight to work with, that if you had 10 or 15 or 100 of those clients, that every day would be a joy. And so what we want to do is we want to start to think about identifying that particular client as being like a fish. Now, when I come back to that fishing metaphor, what I'm really saying is that if I want to catch a freshwater salmon, then I'm probably not going to have the best targeted approach by going to the middle of the ocean with a fishing trawler. If I know that the fish that I want to catch is a freshwater salmon, then I'm probably best to go to a freshwater stream. I'm probably best to go upstream. And if I really want to connect with that person, then probably the best thing for me to do is to figure out what kind of bait does a freshwater salmon like. Now, I must confess, I'm not a fisherman. I did talk to a fisherman and do some research around what freshwater salmon like as their bait. And I found out that in fact, a freshwater salmon responds best to what we call a lure. A lure is one of those little plastic things that you put on the end of your fishing hook, and it sparkles in the water, attracts the attention of the salmon, and they go to come and grab it, and then you catch a fish. So if I really want to work with freshwater salmon, and maybe I can work with the other kinds of fish that are in the ocean, but the people that I really love working with, or the types of fish that I really want to catch, are your freshwater salmon. So if I go out into the middle of the ocean, I might have a hit and miss approach. Whereas if I go to a freshwater stream and I have a lure and I'm ready to go, I may catch fewer fish, but I know that they are qualified. They want to be the people that I want to be working with, and I know that they're guaranteed to be targeted to what I actually really want to be doing. So my point here is that your clients in this analogy are the fish, and you have the bait, which is your product or your service. Are you targeting the right people in the right place? And this is what I mean when I say that everybody is not your client. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, because there's a lot of people sometimes that talk about niching and they go, but Shondell, I don't want to work with the same person. I like the variety. The challenge with that is that we're not doing more with less. We have to adapt our message over and over. And it's true that you can have, one or two niches, or you might have industry niches. You might have characters that you identify in terms of their habits or the places that they hang out. What this is really about, it's about refining what it is that you do and how you take yourself to market, and how you can be credible in the space of the people that you really want to attract the attention of. And so there are a lot of pros and cons, and sometimes people have limiting beliefs as well around, whether or not they can niche, whether or not they'll enjoy what they're doing. I've never met a person who's niched in an appropriate way that hasn't got awesome results and that didn't actually love the fact that they did it after they did it. So I really want to challenge you today to let go of the itty bitty shitty committee or the limiting beliefs that you might have about whether or not you should be niching or whether or not it's going to be effective for you. I think what's really important to keep in mind here is that this is about doing more with less. It's about being able to work with the people that you really want to work with. And I'm going to give you a formula around how you can start to identify that. Now, I said before that not everybody is your client. I remember years and years ago, and there might be some people on the call that are familiar, whether you're in Australia or whether you're in the US or the UK or somewhere else in the world, many organizations around the world exist for a networking event called Business Networking International, or BNI as it's more commonly known. And one of the things that when I first got into business, we did a lot of BNI networking. It was very valuable in the context of being able to do a lot of things for growing our business. And one of the things that I really picked up on from BNI in my experience, both participating as well as watching other members participate and showcase their business, was that sometimes what would happen is they didn't have a clear idea around who they helped, what they actually did for them, the problems that they solved, and that came through in the way that they pitched what it was that they were looking for in terms of referrals. Now, here's my recommendation to you. If you feel uncertain about who it is that you're helping, if you feel uncertain about the value proposition that you offer, then you will be more than likely confusing your audience. And there's an old saying that says that if you confuse, then you lose. So ultimately, people need to feel comfortable that they're clear on what your value proposition is. A lot of people need to feel safe and secure and certain and trust the process of engaging with you. And if you're not clear, then there's no way that they're going to be clear. So you want to make sure that you're really clear on who you help, how you help them, and what the value proposition is of working with you, and then decide on who are those people. And so there was another training that we did, which is located in our NLP Sales Mastery Academy. If you're watching this on my page and you haven't joined the NLP Sales Mastery Academy, then I really encourage you to come over and join over there, where we do these types of videos on a regular basis, where we teach small tips and bite-sized pieces each week. So and if you haven't seen the training already, you might like to go and have a look at it. It was around your pricing psychology and what you need to do in order to maximize your profits. And so when we think about our ideal client avatar, we want to be thinking about who is it that we're actually delivering this to? Whereas a lot of people go straight to, how do I deliver my service? What is it? What's the price of it? And they miss out a really important point of the formula in terms of attracting and defining and aligning what they do with the people that they really want to work with. So I remember, I'll just share a story quickly with you around, one of the impacts of not doing this correctly. So many years ago, we're spending a lot of time coaching some businesses that all did the same kind of thing in the coaching and NLP space. Some of you know I'm a master trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, and so as part of my role within getting that qualification, I used to coach a lot of people in this space around developing and building their businesses. And sometimes I'd talk to them and I'd say, okay, so have you defined your niche? And they'd be like, yep, I'm right, Shondell, I've got my niche, I know what I'm doing. And I'd say, okay, so tell me about your niche. And they'd say, well, it's women between 25 and 30, and they have a real problem with their own self-esteem. And I said, okay. So what else about the niche? Like, where are they located? What kinds of places do they hang out? What do they read? What are they interested in? What sort of challenges are they facing? What kind of jobs do they have? What kind of income do they make? All of those sorts of things around getting the understanding of really being able to character type this particular person. And so the one mistake that I see lots and lots of people making is that they think that a niche is a demographic. People between these ages that are, female or male, or maybe, non-binary, or whatever it may be, they define it based on a demographic solely. And that is not a niche. There is not enough information in that. For us, it's an important part of the equation maybe, but it's not enough in order for us to really know, are these the people that we really want to work with? It's not defining it as the salmon in the freshwater lake. And so if you are not, or the freshwater stream. So if you are not clear in terms of, where do these people hang out? What are the things that keep them up at night? What's the stuff that they're facing? What's their capacity to invest? What's their willingness and readiness to actually invest in what it is that you have to offer? Then it's only really part of the equation. So for many people, they're looking at a demographic only: age, gender, income, marital status, family situation. Do they have children? Are they married? Are they single? Do they have pets? Are they cat owners? Are they are they dog owners? Do they, have other animals like fish because they travel a lot? What sort of cars do they drive? Where do they live? What's their ethnicity, or what language do they speak at home? What sort of education level do they have? What title or position are they holding? What's the size of their business? How many employees do they have, or are they employed? What's the turnover of their business if they have a business? What kind of profits do they expect? These are all important factors when we look at a demographic, and for some people they just stop short of that. What's most important about the demographic is it's only part of the equation. So here's my real tip for you today. And I guarantee you if you spend some time even character profiling your favorite client, then you will get further in terms of being able to identify who is your fish, or who are your one or two fish that you really want your attraction strategy to hit home for. And the next part of this is really about the psychographic information. So sometimes you can have someone who might be, 35 years old, but their experience in life might be such that they value and they're very mature in the way that they think about the world. Maybe they started their business when they were in their 20s, and a lot of their clients are in their 50s and 60s, in which case then they've learnt about a lot of things that have happened in the world as a result of their connections. So what do they value? What are some of the interests that they have? What are their hobbies? What do they spend time doing when they're not working? Do they have a particular political affiliation? Or, it might be a little bit of a touchy subject to think about what are their religious views, but that can actually make an impact as to whether or not they will be willing to invest in your product or service. And so these are some important areas to consider. Now, I want to make something really clear, because I don't want to get into any political shenanigans about, political preferences or religious affiliations. I respect and value anybody and everybody about what their beliefs may be. And what I do know as a master trainer of NLP is that sometimes a person's religious affiliations or sometimes their political distinctions will make them be interested in one particular product and service or one particular company that may have them not be interested in another one. And so I think it's really important when we talk about doing more with less, we want to make sure that the people that you're going after are actually qualified and in a position. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. A number of years ago, I was coaching a lady who was doing life coaching. And she raised her prices. She wanted to charge $250 an hour for what it was that she was doing. And her niche that she had picked, a niche that she was really passionate about, was actually working with young mums who had left the workplace for a couple of years. Career had been a big focus for them, and then they left the workplace for a couple of years, gone on maternity leave. And what she observed was that there was a number of these young mums who had felt and expressed that their confidence had actually been challenged by being out of the loop from the workplace for a little while, and that when they were entering back into the workplace, they felt a little bit less than confident in the same way that they had felt confident before they had children. Now, this was a great niche, and clearly, based on the fact that her clients and her prospects had expressed that this was a thing for them, there was definitely a need. But a need doesn't always mean that the person is qualified and ready to buy. And so what she found was that she was getting a lot of objections in the sales process. So if I come back to this diagram here, where we talk about suspect, prospect, identified, qualified, convinced, and enrolled, a lot of people were getting to the point where they were absolutely convinced that my client could help them with their confidence and that she had the techniques and the tools in order to do that. But for many of them, the prospect of spending $250 an hour was not within their reach. And so while they were definitely convinced in the fact that this could help them and that they needed it, the $250 an hour that she wanted to charge for some 10 or 15 hours to work with them was completely out of their budget, given the fact that they had been a single income family, and the priority when they did have spare cash was about their children, their family, and potentially something that was for the family rather than for the individual. So this is a perfect example of sometimes how people look at their niches. They see a need for a particular audience, but they don't necessarily look at some of the important parts about the demographic, the psychographic, and whether or not the product or service is within reach. Now, this client could have said, well, I can reduce my prices to make it more affordable, but that would have been out of integrity for what she wanted, and I highly recommend that you do not do that. Or she could say, look, this is a viable product for this audience. I might do that pro bono work and focus on a different niche for my revenue generating work, which is what she ended up doing. So she still was able to fulfill the joy proposition for herself around really helping women in that position, but not necessarily, deriving her main income from that. So this is a really important point around that. So the second part of the psychographic information is really about what's their lifestyle like, what's their attitude to their life, their work, and their business. What publications do they read, or what types of books do they read? Are they into self-help books? Are they into business books? Do they like to read, crime novels, or other, dramatic romantic novels, etc.? What do they watch on TV? That can give you a lot of insight into the way a person thinks as well. What kind of groups do they want to be a part of, whether they be social groups or around their hobbies and interests? Do they play sport? What do they listen to? Who are their heroes, and who do they aspire to be like? And so I want to make one really important comment here around the fact that people will buy emotionally and then they will justify logically. So you might want to keep that in mind, that a majority of people will buy emotionally and then they will justify their purchase logically. Now, often when people are looking at their psychographic, their demographic, and taking this to the next level in terms of attracting, define, and deliver what they really want, what we often find is that people are so focused on the concept of being factual, interesting, and really taking a lot of time talking about themselves, their product, their experience, etc. Now, many of you who have been following me for a while know that I often talk about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. We live 10% of our lives consciously and 90% of our lives unconsciously. The unconscious mind is really the domain of your emotions, and it is the domain of your behaviors. And so for a lot of people, when they're having conversations, they're speaking mostly to the conscious mind, which is very much the logical, rational part of the brain. It needs facts and it needs steps, and often will be driven by information. Now, because we're only living 10% of our lives consciously and 90% unconsciously, so many people are living 90% of the equation off the table. And by knowing your psychographic information, you actually start to tap into what are some of the struggles and the challenges that people are experiencing when you are connecting with them, which brings us to a really important part about emotions. A lot of people don't connect the emotions as part of the selling process, as part of the qualification process. What do they hope to achieve? What are some of their aspirations and their dreams? What do they fear? What are the things that get in the way, or what are the things that cause them pain? Because if you don't know what these things are, it's very difficult for you to create a contrast between where their pains are and where their gains are. And so I really encourage you to actually work through this and create a client avatar. And it should be so well defined that you can visualize that person, that if you needed to put their picture on a wanted poster, that you could actually conceptualize that person in terms of their hopes, their desires, their fears, what they're interested in, where they hang out, what kinds of things they're paying attention to, what do they drive, where do they shop, what do they watch. Essentially really be able to put that person's image on a wanted poster so that you know how to target and how to attract that. And so when we talk about leverage, this is about being able to do more with less. If you know your avatar, if you know who you serve, if you know how you add value to them, then marketing and sales becomes an easy breeze, and you know where to go in order to connect with those people. So if you love this training and you'd like to see more of it, if you're watching this on my page, I really want to encourage you to come and join us over in the NLP Sales Mastery Academy. You can join there by going to 3sales.me/community, or if you've got the workbook in front of you, then you can certainly find the link and the QR code to actually join us there. So I really want to encourage you, if you've spent time watching this, I want to say good on you for, showing up and spending your time, investing in how you can do more with less. But more importantly, building your confidence around the different steps of the sales process. And I suppose to sum up, the one thing that I really want to make clear to everybody today is that the different stages of your sales process and the way that you identify the clients that you really want to work with based on this suspect, prospect, identifying people, qualifying them, having them be convinced and having them be enrolled, ultimately is about a conversion strategy. And so keeping in mind, one of the things that I often say to my clients is that sales and marketing is, and always will be a numbers game. And for a lot of people that aren't working with the people that they really want to be working with, it's sometimes got to do with the fact that they're not clear enough about who they want to talk to. Then if they are clear on who they want to talk to, they haven't got the volume to be able to lead and nurture people, because what we know is that generally there'll be a lot of numbers in the suspect. That number then diminishes as we move into a prospect stage. That number will diminish again as you start to identify and qualify people, and then that ultimately will diminish potentially between convinced and also enrolled. So as you look at this, I want you to think about where in your sales cycle or where in your attraction strategy is this actually, coming up as being a bottleneck for you. And what could you do to be able to qualify that person? What's the language that you need to speak to them? And what we have in your workbook there. So if you're watching this on my page, you can click the button and get the workbook. Or if you're watching this in the NLP Sales Mastery Academy community, then you can just comment workbook in the comments below and we'll make sure we get that out to you. But ultimately what you'll end up here is a thing that we call the client avatar summary. And that gives you a snapshot that allows you to put your wanted poster together based on who is the person that you really want to talk to. And I guarantee you, once you have that information, if you work with marketers or if you work with social media strategists, if you are doing your own social media or putting together brochures, if you're doing a selling proposition and working out your flow with your ecosystem, then having your avatar is going to make things so much more refined. It'll make it easier for you to do more with less because you're not constantly trying to re-answer these questions, and you know what kind of language you need to use in order to connect with your audience. So if you've enjoyed this training and you'd like to see more, then please make sure that you subscribe to our NLP Sales Mastery Academy. If you're already here, then that's fantastic. Invite someone you know that could really utilize this information by sending them the link 3sales.me/community. I hope this has been useful for you guys. If you need the workbook, then just reach out to us in the comments below. And until we meet again, I'm Shondell from Life Puzzle. Be well and be empowered. Bye for now, guys.